Hey everybody, it's the 3D Printing Professor, and we've kind of come to the end of the 3D Printing 101 course, but don't worry, there will be more coming in the future. However, it's time that we take a look, get some hands-on experience with the various slicers that you're going to get an opportunity to use. This video is going to be broken up into 4 parts. Each video is going to deal with one of the top slicers that you're likely to run into and use. Now, I recommend you use whichever slicer your 3D printer manufacturer tells you to use. If they ship their own slicer or if they have one of their own, then you should use that one. But if not, you can pick, and here's a couple of the choices. Now, to save you from having to watch through a slicer that you're not going to use, I'm going to make one video per slicer. Let's go hit the slicers and get some hands-on experience and see if we can slice a very tricky model so that you can learn the settings that you need. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Cura 2, which is the latest version of the Cura slicing software from the Ultimaker Corporation. It's a beautiful piece of software, and it was motivated by the Ultimaker 3 for them to make these changes. And you'll notice that a lot of things have changed from Cura 1 if you knew Cura 1. For one, the user interface, all the data and information that you normally would get, which would be on this side of Cura 1, is now over there. So it necessitated me moving my camera, but not a big deal. We can make do with this. So the first thing that you need to do with any slicer is load up a model, and the model that we are going to be using again is the Tornado model here that was originally created by Margin Elzerman and has been modified by Alessandro Ranciulli, and he modified it with a top and a bottom, and so let's take a look at that model. So to load a model, you either click the open file here, you click file open file here. I've got all of my models organized in the print projects folder here, and then you just double click on the model and click open. Or my personal way of doing it is to go to where the model is located on my directory structure and just click and drag the STL I want to print in here. Now notice that Cura immediately says, whoa, first of all, none of the models fit in the build volume. This model at 100% is too big. And so it auto-scaled the model to 84% of the original size. Now there's a little bug in the current version where even after auto-scaling it says, I still can't print it. But if you click on the model and just kind of wiggle it around a little bit, it'll say, oh wait, no, now it fits. And it's good. And that's one thing. You can click and drag and move the model so you don't have to print everything in the middle. Also, we have options over here to scale it. Notice it's automatically scaled it to 48%. So in Cura 2, the scale factor is from 0 to 100%. So if you want something to be half size, it would be 50%. I want this to be 45%. And there we go, because I like nice even numbers. And again, you can turn off uniform scaling. And if you do that and you say, now I want it to be 20% of its height, then notice that while it's still wide, it's 20% of its height. But notice that in doing this, it created these red sections. And this is something that Cura does to warn you that these angles might be printing at too high an angle. Because I squashed it down, the angle of those facets change, and so you might want to turn on support. Now, of course, I'm not going to turn on support. I'll talk about how to do that in a minute, but I'm just going to go back to making this 45% and turn universal scaling back on. Also down here at the bottom we have view mode, so you can view this as a solid print. X-ray mode allows you to see through the model so that you can see what's on the other side. And then also there is layers mode, and layers mode gives you kind of a preview of what the print is going to look like when it's done. And Cura is very fast at bringing this up. So there's the top and sides. As you go on down, you can see the infill for each individual layer, and it gives you a nice shadow for the whole thing. I love Cura's preview. Cura 2's preview. It's absolutely beautiful. And there you can see the 10% infill, and then we can go down and we can see the flat layers on the bottom, and everything is perfect. It looks good, except that it's nothing like what I want. Because this model I actually want to print hollow with no top, so it can be like a vase. So for that, we're going to have to edit the settings. Now let's take a look at these settings. Oh, I forgot to mention, the first thing you're going to have to do when you set up Cura is set it up for your printer. But if it doesn't have a printer set up, the first thing it does when it opens up is it says, hey, what printer do you want me to print on? Unfortunately, my MP Select Mini was already on there, and I could tell it the size and everything. And so, yeah, that was all set up. And what material do I want to print? Now, here's another thing about Cura that I think is interesting. They've made low quality 0.15 millimeter, which for me has always been like the minimum acceptable quality. 2 millimeter can be done and it prints faster, but 0.15 millimeter layers are just at that crux between looking good and printing not too slowly. So it's interesting to me that that's low quality. Normal quality is 0.1 millimeter, and high quality pushes it less than 100 micron layer height, which is super cool. I'm going to keep it at low quality. I'm okay with that. But down below, now these are your normal settings. Down below are your advanced settings. And down here is where we can turn on our support. We can enable support right here. Again, this model doesn't need it. So if you turn on supports, you're not going to see any difference. It's still going to reslice the model and try to see where it needs supports, but it's not going to find anywhere. Everything on this will print without supports, I think. Yes, no supports necessary for this model. So might as well turn that back off. So I said that I want to have a hollow top and no infill on the inside. Well, no infill on the inside is easy enough. I'll just switch that to 0%. But how do I get rid of the top thickness? Now notice again in Cura 2, everything is done in absolute dimension. So if I want 0.8 millimeter on my bottom thickness, that's going to translate to about 7 layers. But I want a nice thick bottom layer, but I want no top layer. And in fact, I want more a 1 millimeter wall, which is interesting because I got a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. If I scroll down into here and scroll in, yeah, it looks like it's doing about 3 shells. So yeah, that's all right. I might want to thicken that up, maybe 1.5 millimeter wall heights. And I can change the bottom to be a nice 2 millimeter thick bottom or a 1.5 millimeter thick bottom. But where do I change the top layer? Well, this is something clever in Cura 2.0. If you hover over each of these headings, you see this little gear icon, and if you click on this, a new menu comes up that allows you to turn on what settings you can see. So you can automatically just turn off everything if you don't want to see it, or turn on everything if you want absolute control. Well, I want to control the top layer, and I'll leave the bottom layer on there too. And now I can independently control these. So my top thickness is 0. And it's giving me a little information. It's normally calculated but has no settings, so I can restore it. And I love that you can just click the little restore button and it puts everything back. And my bottom layer is 1.5 millimeter. So as we go up and down the layers, we'll see that it prints a couple of bottom layers and then comes up to the top, and the top is hollow. So now I've got this set up all the way that I want it to. I can turn on skirts and rafts and all those things that I want. My brim I've got set at 0. I can turn on, but you know, all those settings you can play with. We talked about those individual settings. I've got this the way that I want, so it's now time to take this G-code file, save it, and then take that G-code file and give it to my printer. So I can do that. It's actually down here. There's a click Save to File button. Click that button right now, and then it automatically appends with a little MSM to tell me a little information about the way that it was sliced. However, I don't know what MSN means, so all I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this because I want, not that I don't like the original file name, but it's not really descriptive, I think, of what this is. This is our tornado. I hit dash and I put in here that it's sliced for my MP Mini for PLA in vase mode. This is just a little code that I've come up with because I slice for multiple printers and multiple materials and things like that. I've come up with a little code so that I know how I sliced it. And sometimes I'll even put on here 2.5 hour, 3 hour print so that I can have an idea of how long it will take to print. I forgot to say that on my last video. Yeah, that's all right. You don't have to do any of that. This is just a code that I do. I can recommend that to you if you like. But there we go. We hit save, and then you just have to take that G-code file and get it to your printer. Now, I'm not going to save this one because I have to do this again for another slicer after this. But there you go. There's everything you need to know about how to use some advanced settings to do some cool things. And I mean, check it out. We made the shape of this model was not defined by its STL file. It was defined by the way that we manipulated the slicer to do it. And that's super cool. So I hope that this has helped you. If this is the slicer that you're going to be using, I hope that this will help you make excellent models. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the comments. Can't wait to hear from you. As with all of the 3D Printing 101 videos, there will be a write-up on my blog with additional information, so go check that out. Thank you very much for watching. Safety first, and I'll see you next time.